Miss Kelin?
How's it going?
Good.
Good,
How about you?
good. Can't complain. Who would
Or
listen?
won't.
Or won't.
Won't complain.
We're gonna not. It's Monday. Yay.
Monday's the happiest day of the week.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the sun's out today. So that's a good thing.
Have you noticed how many people are dying lately? Have you noticed that? Have you noticed that?
Like a fire or
No, just collectively. Like this time of year, people die more often, right? They get out of the sun, they stay too much indoors, they're around a bunch of people, they do a bunch of risky things that just kill everybody.
Yeah.
And so like we're hitting peak death rate for the year.
Oh God.
But I noticed this year it was in higher numbers than in previous years. And I think that's attributed to, number one, we're more depressed than ever. We're disconnected from people. Everybody just threw a bunch of poison in their veins over the COVID thing, and it's taken those people out. And then the food that we're eating is just freaking toxic and sludge. Like there is more reason for death to happen than not death.
Yeah, I think it used to just sort of be the whole like seasonal depression thing and holidays and whatnot. And of course that would, make a little bit more of an influx, but it's probably even greater now. Like you said, not only is it just all the other things we were already facing, but now it's worse because of even more crap that we're facing or putting in our bodies or dealing with mentally. And yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah,
it's a lot.
So there is a true effort to depopulate the earth. And we're going to talk today about whether or not it's a natural effort where nature is trying to rid human beings and this is just the natural cycle, or if there's a concerted effort where there are people that just don't like people very much and they're trying to rid us by sort of nefarious means. So which camp are you in? Or maybe both. Maybe both.
Well, I was gonna say, I think it's because we have all, I don't know if it's gotten dumber, but maybe we've all gotten a little more ridiculous when it comes to certain things. But maybe that's led by the second option. Maybe that is led by some powers that be putting different ideas into our heads. And, like I feel like we're all taking in more toxins than we need to be, whether that's through food or other substances, things that people are, like women are injecting things into themselves left and right. Why? That can't be good for you. Maybe it's not super detrimental, but it can't be good for you, especially in combination to everything else we're putting in our bodies. And so I think a lot of it too is things that we are doing to ourselves, what we are not only just consuming with what we're putting in our bodies by eating, but things we're consuming mentally, our technology, our social media, things that we're involving ourselves with. I think we're making our cortisol and our stress rates through the roof. And I feel like we're doing it to ourselves.
Yeah. And I'm going to blame boredom more than anything. I think our biology needs frictions. We need problems, real problems to solve. If you think about it, like when you go through, natural disaster of some kind and you're put in a mode where it's more survival, like you're not thinking about stupid shit. Like you're not in the middle of a fire, like in California, you're like, how could I make my lips more puffy? Right. You're not thinking that. So when you get bored and you're not really solving a problem, it's almost treated like a religion where we're going to invent new things to torture ourselves with. I think we're at our absolute worst when we don't have those problems to solve. And we get softer as well. So, I mean, you take today's kids and throw them out into the woods and say survive for 10 hours and they'll probably freaking die. Like there's nothing in us that makes us die after 10 hours, but they would find a way to die just because of how soft and, how we have no, you put GPS in to go places. You put me in a car with a map and I can figure it out. You put today's in front, in a car and not have a GPS to work with, then they're just freaking aimless.
Yeah.
Right? And so we lost the ability to survive.
I just recently watched a video online the other day. Some school did an experiment. They took a bunch of kids. They were like teenagers or maybe preteens. And they took their phone away for 21 days. And all the kids agreed to do this. They locked the phones up. You cannot touch this device for 21 days. And they followed these kids to see what happened and how they reacted. And in the very beginning, they were not happy. And they're like, I am so bored. I can't take this. I want my phone back. I want something to do. I want to play on it, whatever. But they couldn't get it back. It's like, deal with it. And by the end of the 21 days, the kids said they are happier without it. They feel less stressed. They started becoming more creative, and they were creating things, and they were focused, and they were sleeping better, and they were performing better in school, and all these different things. And I'm like, and that's what we are stifling. That only happened when we took this away. So not taking it away, what are they? What are our kids going to become as adults?
Yeah, our biology is going to react. And when we don't have true things to solve, we literally deprogram ourselves from the instincts that are supposed to help us survive. And like I think like an engineer. So if I wanted to depopulate the earth, if I wanted everybody to die, I make my list of things that would make people die the most, right?
Mm-hmm.
And let's list them. Let's do a little exercise.
What could cause mass death?
First off, like human beings, they just have too many kids. Like they propagate. If I kill one, they're just gonna, the next one's gonna have 5. So I'm gonna make them have less kids. Some of them I'm just gonna make them so they can't have kids at all, or don't have the motivation, or I'm gonna make there'll be a stigma where having kids is somehow a bad. And if you do happen to go through it, I'm going to give you lots of ways to kill your kids. So we got get rid of the propagation of the species would be number 1 on the list, because if I can stop the cell division, right?
Yeah.
Then I just have to work on killing the alive ones. I don't have to worry about more being made. It's number 1.
Yeah. I keep thinking of all the different ways to do that. But yeah, you stop the reproduction.
That's right. And there's think of the 50 ways right now. The feminizing of men, right? The chemicals that cause, not the propagation to be harder. Abortion, cutting off the ability, like the what's that called? In vitro? No. What is it when you tie your tubes? IVF.
IVF is when you're being when you're trying to have a baby.
Yeah. What's that other one where you? It's birth control. We'll just say birth control.
Tying your tubes. Yeah.
So birth control. Again, the toxins in our environments that are, hurting our immune system. If you watch the fertility rates over a graph over a number of years, it's not going in an upward direction. It's going in a low direction. So that's number 1, is get rid of the propagation. Now 2, now we got to kill the live ones, because the live ones are living too long. We got to shorten their life. How would you take people out?
Oh gosh. I mean, all kinds of ways, things that they have to take. Medicine, food supply.
So chemicals, we'll put some chemicals in
them.
What about if I make them depressed and I make them angry all the time? Like I just flood them with things that make them feel like life isn't even worth willing.
Like let's take influencers online, make them look a certain way, make them present life to be in a certain way, and then reward them for that look. Pay them, give them sponsorships, make them wealthy so that they can keep portraying that to the youth.
Yeah, and just the discontent about everything, the faith in your neighbor, the faith in your community, the faith in your church, the faith in your government, all of that is a constant barrage of just having nobody that you can trust or connect with. So that's number 2 that I do. So I'd break social bonds between people, that everybody else makes you feel bad, right? And you don't want to connect with any of those people. Then I'm going to give you electronics that I can control what gets presented to you. I could have algorithms that just jack with you and make you even feel more terrible than the physical in real world stuff. The electronics are also going to make you feel hella terrible.
Yeah, you can sort of control what they're taking in, what they're seeing. You can sort of give this insatiable desire, I guess, for approval, for likes, for attention, for whatever, where it's like the more you get, the more you want, and it's never enough. And now you don't know how to handle not having that. God.
All right.
Like social media and internet's a big one.
When you start seeing the population decline, and also lack of people having replacement kids for themselves. Because I think the ratio is like, if you have a couple, they have to have 2 kids in order to keep furthering the species. And I think we're like at 1.8, so we're not quite keeping up with the amount of deaths. So we're mathematically dividing that down. People are not having replacement kids. Okay. So we live in Youngstown, and Youngstown actually is a good model for this whole conversation. So we had a thriving community of a couple 100,000 people that, because of an industry leaving us, shrunk down to, 60,000 people. But you still have infrastructure built for a higher number of people. So you have institutions that both need revenue and tax base and services that are being provided. And so you might have had 49 police departments within that space, but now you don't need that many. So the death of the population means the death of infrastructure. So have you ever watched government get smaller?
Not really.
Okay, so they don't. They're increasing their presence, not decreasing their presence.
Yeah.
Okay, so like if you took this area and you wanted to say, okay, we're a fourth of our population that we once were, right? So what we have to do is make infrastructure at a quarter. What would you do? Like, what would your first move be?
Well, you gotta start cutting some funding on things. You don't need to really kind of upkeep all the things that were being kept up because it's not being used as much.
Do you consolidate? Like when a community is growing, it sprawls outwardly, right? Which means it spreads out from the dense populated areas to least populated. When you contract, should we not pool all of the living spaces closer to where the services are? Because if you're spread out, you have costs that is, huge expanse. Like maybe if you have a fourth of it, if you took the perimeter, like maybe 30% of the outer perimeter and just bulldozed all the infrastructure and then fixed up or made useful the closer areas.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You effectively cut out a portion of your exposure, your liability.
Yeah. Yeah. I keep thinking like, oh my God, is that happening?
Yes. So one of the Social Security arguments where you had a population group, like we don't talk enough about Social Security, but it's a garbage product. And I know a lot of people hate the fact that it is, but it absolutely is. And what's happening there is you had a population boom with the baby boomers that, the government broke the system in a way where when people made their payments into the system, they didn't lockbox it and keep it somewhere. They just spent it on government programs. And the problem with spending it on government programs, you don't create a net gain. So if you said, hey, I need $1,000 for Christmas, Joe, here's my $1,000. And I'm holding your $1,000. I'm like, oh, I'm going to put this in a CD, right? When I take it back out to give it to you, there's more, right? It's $1,000 plus whatever interest that I put it in because it was safe, it was guaranteed and whatever. When the government spends it, they have net losses. So they invested in things that are worth zero after they've spent it on X. When you go to ask for your 1,000, they have to go to a new person that just paid and said, oh, here you go. Right.
Yeah,
and
it comes from 1,000.
So the whole system requires people paying in because there's not this pile of money to be able to draw from. Right.
Yeah.
And so with less and less people having kids and there being less and less population to pay in the Social Security tax, there's not enough money, or there won't be enough money shortly to be able to make those outgoing payments. So they're looking around like, all right, you gave us the money, spent the money, don't have the money. There's not enough people to give you money. Like, where's my next option but to raise taxes, raise caps, reduce the age, limit the number of people that, need the Social Security benefits to come in line with where you're collecting things. So if you want to argue the breaking the system by using the money and, using government services now, you have to get in your time machine and go back there. That's already been done. So you have to talk about like where it is right now. Where does that money actually come from? Have you ever done the math on Social Security?
No.
It's garbage.
Really?
Oh, it's garbage.
I keep hearing things like, oh, it's not going to be here. And we have family members that have been drawing Social Security at a pretty like younger age. Like they probably, most people would have held off. And they're like, no, get it now because it's going to be gone. So might as well get it now. And I'm
well,
like,
the biggest part of the garbage is if you were to do Social Security, do the exact same amount and put it in the markets, right? You give it to an investment advisor. They place it over the course of 40 years of your working life. There would be the difference is that you will never get the money that you paid into it ever in a million years. And don't even consider how the money could have gone in the private markets or the public markets. You're not even gonna get what you originally put back into that sucker. Okay. That's number one. And when you freaking die, it's just gone.
yeah,
There's nothing to give to somebody else. So it's such a garbage product. It's such a loss of value over the course. So I hope it does. I hope tomorrow someone comes along and says, okay, the government's made the promises to recipients right now. Anybody who paid in, we're just going to give you your money back. You can take that money, invest it somewhere, start a business, whatever you want to do with it. But we got to clear this out.
This might be a dumb question. Don't we have to pay into Social Security?
Yeah.
So we don't even have the option.
No, but they could. Government can release the next generation from paying into a system that's so broken and so mathematically upside down that they don't further break it sometime in the future. They got to pick a point, and we're not going to realize the benefit until 40 years from now when these people retire, but give them the option to, you can even make it a forced option, right?
Yeah.
You could say you have to take 15% of your income and you have to put it somewhere, but we're going to give you the option. Don't give it to the government.
Yeah.
Right. Or if you want to, you can give it to the government. It's going to be the same deal.
We'll take it.
Or you have to do something with it that you can't touch until you're 65, right? Make it still mandated that you have to do it. That way that will protect us to people getting to their older years and not having anything whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
But we have to treat it different. It's not an investment whatsoever. But how did I get on Social Security from talking about
people dying?
So yeah, there's going to be less people to pay into the system. So there's going to be less people doing all of our systems, right?
Yeah.
Think of what your taxes are going to have to be when your population decreases by 10%. So the government's growing exponentially this way, and your tax base is growing exponentially this way, right? Less.
So
people.
you're saying they could benefit then from fewer people, but we just keep growing.
No, it's the opposite. Their services would not get cut down. So their costs would continue to go up on government services.
But they would just get more money from us.
They'll raise your taxes.
Yeah.
They're going to have to. They're going to have to. They're going to have to cut the age. So when Social Security was founded, maybe we lived into our 65, and so they set the date. Hopefully you'll be dead and won't want to collect on it. So 65 it was. The average age now is 85. You got to pump that shit up to 85.
Yeah.
Now longer life equals less need to retire anyway, and maybe you save the system that way. No, people aren't happy about that one at all.
Yeah.
But you have to take the institutional math, why it was created. Was this something that you wanted people to live on, or do you want this thing to be supplementary to help you out in old age? So you got to make a choice. You can't have all bad choices. You can't have it a terrible investment at a young age, pretending like it was a good investment, and then not having the value that you put in there at the end of the day. Those are all bad decisions.
Yeah.
Right. Make it an investment where it's not a net loss when you couple it with government spending. Make it so that, it is so if you're making 10% returns and you had 40 years to put enough scratch together to make 10% returns be equal to what your pay is right now, you could put that on a spreadsheet and figure it out, and then find some investment guy who will give you 10% returns on your investments, right?
Uh-huh.
So over the course of 40 years, you can weather ups and downs and whatever. That would be a good plan, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Same money as you put into Social Security, and you would be able to live off the investment and still have the investment. So it might throw off $70,000 a year, right, that you live on, but then you have all that money that you accumulated because you kept it rather than giving it to the garbage government.
So why is it a law that we have to do it? Because they want our money for other stuff?
Like the system collapses if you have someone that says, hey, let's privatize Social Security and you can put it wherever you want, the system dies that day because there's not enough money that they can collect from taxpayers. They would have to raise the caps, they would have to raise the percentage, and then no politician is going to want to, kill the economy over its retirees. Like it's a bad position no matter what.
Well, there's nothing we can do about it.
We can keep electing people that are bad in math, right?
Yeah.
Wait till it just dies. They can look around and say, how did that happen?
Yeah.
Right? And then all of our, recipients are left without a check coming in anymore. That's really this trajectory we're on right now. That's the end.
So when it dies, then everybody's just screwed.
They're screwed. That when people say it's going away, this is what they're pointing to.
And there's nothing we can do to keep ourselves safe from that because you can't.
Without a really high cost. Without a really high cost, without someone who's smart enough to take it serious, that's the inevitability.
Well, that's going to make some more people depressed. Speaking of being mentally unwell.
Well, here's a good thing or a bad thing. If you can manipulate the economy, you can inflate your way out of certain problems. So if you have a big deficit and then you can, use inflation to offset. So China does this all the time, making loans and sort of like manipulating inflation and deflationary periods. So like we as consumers, when we see inflation happening, do you want to be holding debt or do you want to be holding cash in an inflationary?
I feel like I don't ever want debt. Do I?
In an inflationary period? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's your best time to hold debt because your debt gets less valuable. So if I bought a car for $1,000, right?
Yeah.
I owe $1,000 in today's deal. If I inflate, that debt gets less valuable for whoever loaned the cash when it was at a higher value. Because now the cash that they're holding that you're going to be paying them back is still $1,000. What would happen if your loans were inflation corrected? So if the inflation's 4%, now you sign that $1,000 loan. Now you owe $1,040 because we got to keep parity between the debt that you created and the today's cash that you're going to be paying it back with.
Yeah.
Long-term loans like that suck for inflationary periods.
Yeah.
So assets and cash do really well on deflationary periods because then the asset is getting stronger in comparison to the debt. You don't want to be holding debt in deflationary and you don't want to be holding assets or vice versa in inflationary periods.
God, it's so complicated.
Yeah.
That's a complicated game.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, but no politician will talk about things in a mathematical or engineering ways in order to fix it because they know every conclusion or solution is terrible for their political career. So you'll never have them fix it because if they do nothing, it just kicks the problem down to the next group or the next group after that and next group, but no group is going to jump on it and actually solve the problem because it's almost like they people that are probably not even alive made a promise to them of people who are collecting it now. And what are you going to do? Go dig them up and blame them for being also terrible at math? Or are you going to hold people that aren't even in Congress responsible for spending the money that should have went to Social Security? This is government math. This is why everything breaks.
And then I feel like too, any possibility of ever getting anything fixed is probably going to come with a temporary downside.
Oh, huge downside.
And voters would never vote for it. They'd be like, oh, this candidate wants to raise this and cost us this, and we're going to end up paying this. But it's like, okay, yes, temporarily to get us out of this bind. But they're
Nobody will do it.
I'm not doing that.
And
I want the guy that lowers it.
If you take the other group and you say, we're going to increase the cap. So like on the first $200,000 of payroll, you pay Social Security. Anything over $200,000, you don't have to pay Social Security on the top end. So it's basically there's a bunch of people who could afford it whether or not they should have to pay it. Now, if you're wealthy and you have paychecks that big, are you going to be relying on Social Security? Because if it's an investment where I'm putting into it so I can collect it later, then you're asking from someone who probably won't even be collecting it to put a bigger investment, right, as a charity to pay somebody else's who is going to benefit from it. So that would be one solution. They're not going to like that, right? Or increasing taxes anywhere on the economy. You're just taking more value from productive people, productive enterprises, and you're moving it to unproductive, non-growth liabilities, right? Those people that are in their latter years are not going to be investing those things in creating new infrastructure, creating more people, new businesses, new ideas, whatever. They're going to be consumers, and they're just going to buy stuff. And so the people who cater to the consumer group are going to really like that, but everybody who has to pay the taxes to be able to fund that is going to be really displeased. So 2 for 2. You can't raise the age because everybody's going to hate that on one side. You can't raise the taxes because the economy is going to suffer and the people on the other side are going to hate it. Any other options? What would you do if you had the scepter for a day? Fix it, Kelin. Come on.
Well, I know I'm not good enough at math to fix it, but it sounds like a sham. We're screwed.
Totally. And it's like musical chairs. I hope I am not around for when the music stops what it'll probably do is little band-aids along the way will stretch this thing out. We can either solve it in 5 years and have a lot of fallout and a lot of unhappy people, or stretch it out over 30 years where we put these little band-aids on it to just get us more time. But there will be, it's either going to be one big devastation that lasts a little bit or an enormous devastation stretched out over a number of years. And, both of them suck. Again,
if you were in a position of power, which would you prefer?
What, to rip the band-aid off of it now? Well, just like student loan debt. Okay. If student loan debt is broken and it's criminal, like it's what it does to people.
Yeah.
If you stopped issuing student loans right now, right, then it would create a different problem, but at least in 20 years, you wouldn't have the person that didn't go and get student loan debt in the first place would not have to be forgiven or have to pay everything back. But you have to stop whatever you're doing from happening first. So that's why in the Social Security Department, I would stop feeding into it, right? I would give, starting today, everybody's given the option whether or not they want to partake or not. Okay. And get the new people out of the system. If we put another person into Social Security, we just created a problem 40 years down the line for ourselves. So we can never stop it. So we got to stop doing it in order to start working on it. Then after you've stopped the hemorrhage into the black hole that is Social Security, now you figure out 40 years of people and what you do with them. These people, you got a long time to be able to engineer away. And these people will have a really short time before they're going to depend on it. So you set a plan up for each one of those quadrants of people and what their needs are going to be and how long, they have to get their stuff together. If they reach 30 and they haven't put anything into a retirement by that point, right, then today's a good day to get started. And, is 35 years enough? Probably. So is it better at 20? Sure. But 30 is better than not at all.
So why don't we do this? Just because they don't want to make the others unhappy?
Well, it stems in with the whole depopulation. Where's the incentive to rescue this thing? What's why would we, if the politicians love it because it gives them relevance and something to talk about, then the politicians aren't going to end it.
Yeah.
And law enforcement's not going to end it because there's nothing illegal about it. Half the voters will shoot everything down no matter which it is. So the voters aren't going to end it. What's the incentive? It's not going to change unless there is a primary incentive, and there isn't. So that would be number one then. Create a primary incentive. If it's even possible, create a primary incentive. And then somebody's going to have to do an unpopular thing to support the primary incentive.
But back to my original thought of no one's going to do anything that's going to be helpful. We hurt ourselves.
Yes.
We do dumb shit to ourselves.
And that's why I say it's all inevitable, right? AI taking jobs, totally inevitable. And it's because Human beings are not good at collecting and coming common ground. It's a fight, and I'm not supposed to trust you, and community is dead. So I can't, I'm not propagating the species, and I can't solve any problem bigger than, where we're going to eat tonight.
Yeah. Now, if AI is taking over all kinds of jobs, isn't that then eventually going to start leading to not paying into Social Security because a robot's not paying into it? So isn't that a good way of it to start?
I have used and waterfalled this math in 1,000 different ways, and none of it makes sense. There's a portion of it that there's a missing element to. So let's just say AI came out, and every industrial, everyone who's picking crops, everybody who's stacking boxes, everybody who's doing a job a robot could do, tomorrow you're unemployed. So you got this group of people, maybe that's, we'll say 50 million people are in that group, got replaced tomorrow. What do they do now? They wake up 8 o'clock. What do they do?
Call the unemployment office.
Okay. So they are either going to be a possession of the state, where now the state owns them, and they give them a basic income so that they can also be consumers, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's not a good deal, because if you want a group of people to die fastest, right, you take their purpose away from them.
Yeah.
So that group is dead meat if you end up, replacing them. AI is going to replace workers a little bit slower, but you're still going to have the same math at the end of it. People are going to be replaced, and they're going to have to rediscover what their purpose and their place is. And if we've taken people and shook all of their creativity out of them, then they're not going to find a purpose. And then they're going to be the idle people that are going to take their checks and shoot their gums or their lips full of things that make them more puffy. And that's going to be their purpose now, is to be more appealing to people for clicks. Cycle, like it's a drain. It's a drain. It really is.
It is. Or they snap and then they become murderers.
Depopulation. That's number 6 on the list, is turn everybody against one another, devalue life, and then make it a pretty good option to take out your fellow friends.
I now no longer value life, and I have nothing to lose. So.
Exactly. Or live for. I have nothing to live for. I have nothing to lose, and life's not valuable anyway. All of the ingredients, like, I hate to be the pessimistic one about humanity, but I see all problems and no solutions that are solvable by popping, because you'd have to inflict whatever you decide on everybody, and there's not common ground on what or who needs to be solved, right?
I always go back to this, but if tomorrow social media was banned, and not even like we're not allowed to have it, I mean, like, it no longer existed, if like Facebook and TikTok and Instagram and Threads and everything was like, we are all done, we think this is poisoning people, we're not doing it anymore, and it all goes away, do you think we are better or worse off?
Still worse off, because again, unless you have a time machine and go back and not implement it in the first place. So I'll give you let's just say you have a zoo nearby, right? And when you were a kid, you went to the zoo and there was this animal, and there was a sign that said, don't feed the animal, right? Because we want natural things to occur. And you're like, the animal really likes what I'm feeding it. So you go feed the animal, right? You did it. You started feeding the animal, did it for every morning for 10 years, right? And now the animal loves it. It depends on you. It doesn't eat any of the food they give them anyways, because it loves what you're giving them. Now I'm going to ask you, it's broken. What happens if you just don't feed the animal anymore?
It dies.
Doesn't know how to eat. You've already weakened it. Like, it would be,
you made it dependent.
Hysteria. You would expect, you'd be like, no, the animal can now go relearn all the stuff, whatever, right? People that would put down the device because there's nothing to do on it, and would just relearn how to explore the woods or create artwork or whatever. That's not likely to happen. It's going to be confused. It's going to be hurt. It's not going to know what to do, and it will suffer, right? And so really, and I cite how important smart people are in every project, every solution that needs to be solved, or every problem that needs to be solved, because the short-term people will do what feels good. The long-term people will do things that make sense. They will ask questions like, all right, I'm going to set up a table with money on it, and I'm going to put a sign that says, take what you need, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then people who need it will come up and take it. And then the long-term person is going to say, what are you going to do if it gets known that you have a table worth of money and a majority of the people who don't need it are taking all your money, and so there's none left for the people who actually need it? It takes me asking that before you do it, not after you're like, why is this happening? And I would say, I kind of told you before you did that was a possibility. We didn't prepare for the inevitability of what I said was going to happen was happened. And now you just feel freaking bad because you just did it for what felt good rather than for what made sense on a financial deal. Do you think people who want to cut Social Security hate old people? No. Do they hate them? But in politics, right?
Yeah.
It's that you hate the old person. I would object to you feeding the animal in the zoo, not when you're doing it, because I'm sure he's absolutely happy. My criticism and my fear would be, what if you can't do it anymore? Right?
Yeah.
If you can't do it anymore, then in the future, then he's not going to be fed and it's going to happen. So then you can say, okay, well, I got two things. I got to do the money on the table, and I got to make it more difficult for people who don't need it. And then you start thinking about the thing that hasn't happened yet, but you're planning for it as if it were going to happen.
Yeah, it's almost like people see this big idea and all the ways that people can benefit from it. And they're like, well, let's do it. And it's like, wait, you got to look down the road, like a few steps ahead.
Yeah.
Where can this go? Be the devil's advocate. And they don't. They're just like, but this is helpful now, and this is going to create all these things.
And that's all my objection with even science is when they create a trajectory where no things change, right? They say, here's the way it's going to happen, and you're not going to have anything in environment or with people or any of the characteristics change over time. Well, that's bullshit. Everything changes over time, right? And when, if you were to take what's happening today and just, invent in your head that it's going to be like that forever, I got a good one for you. I love Elon Musk. He has a great mind. I think he has pretty pure motivations. I think he's a really smart guy, right? And if I were to take him and put him at the center of a huge, important, pivotal, key role somewhere, my brain goes to, all right, I trust him, and I think he's smart enough. And if it's that important of a role, who's going to replace Elon Musk when he's no longer on this planet? He's only going to live for 90 years, right? Are we going to find someone just like Elon Musk to throw in that position? Or is that position going to go to shit because we're going to have to put someone who's not Elon Musk, and now he's going to have all of the powers and the influence and the resources that the smart version had, but now he's dumb.
Yeah.
Right. So before, and deconstruction and deconsolidation is essential because things change, and you give the president the power to take somebody out because your guy, straight shooter and makes all great decisions. And then somebody has to think, wait a minute, what if a not so great president got on there? Wasn't a straight shooter. Now they have the ability to take somebody out. We don't like that idea.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, it comes back to that. You have to find a solution, but then find a way to make the solution sustainable.
Mm-hmm.
If any valuable changed in this, like Elon Musk leaving or somebody leaving, how does it then continue?
Yep.
But nobody looks at that.
Not at all. Everybody's in that short term, 30 minutes in front of them, conditioned by the electronics that give them instant gratification. There's no patience to be able to see 6 months, year, 20 years down the road. It's that short-sightedness that makes it so that it's not even a superpower. Like when you're planning out your trip using triptychs and maps, right? You're looking to the end of where you're headed even before you go. With GPS, you're looking 5 minutes into the future at best because the car is going to do the stuff that's important. So we were losing that ability to look further down the road.
Yeah. I mean, you even see this with less serious things like people buying pets. Oh, I want to get my kids a puppy. This is going to be so great. They'll love the puppy. Okay. Well, when your kid goes off to college,
you have a dog.
Yeah. Who's taking care of it? I had a family member one time, an old in-law, their mother was older and widowed and aging, and she had a dog for many years, and her dog passed away. And first reaction from the kids is, let's get her a puppy. Oh, she's so sad that her dog died. Let's go get her a puppy, and then she'll have something to care for and something to do. And I was like, excuse me, you're getting a 90-year-old woman a puppy? Do you have any idea the amount of stress that is going to put on her? Number one. Number two, like the puppy will outlive her. Guaranteed. This dog will live longer. Who's taking it? Are you taking it? Is it going to be your dog? Is it going to be someone who's taking it? Oh, we didn't think about that. Really? You did? That's what people are doing. But we have this thing and it solved this need and it makes this thing look so great. And we'll just leave it at that. And we'll cross that bridge when we get there, when shit hits the fan.
I think they're trying to kill her. Like, again, if I wanted to kill her, what I would do, I would hire a mariachi band to play 24/7, give her a puppy, and make sure someone bangs on her window every day on the every hour of the day.
Yeah. It'd be like, are you trying to harm people? Yeah. Nobody sees it. So then what happens? We all die. We all die of stress and heart attacks or murder or whatever, because none of us can handle anything.
But I will be on Mars with the actual group of people who are both smart and capable, looking at survival, simplified life. They're not sitting around watching football and they're working on survival and feeding themselves and expanding land and whatever. That's what we need. We need Mars, but we need to do it here.
Yeah, that's probably why all these AI things are, listen, we have a handful of really intelligent people and we're screwed when they die off. So we better at least make robots.
People can do stuff and be completely replaced when the AI is better than human beings. No problem there.
Oh God, yeah.
And those sex robots. Did you see that picture?
I saw, you posted something and I feel like I saw that same robot somewhere else. It's like a blonde female robot.
Yeah, there was a demonstration and the company name was on the background of it, but they're making different the genders, they're making different ethnicities, hair colors. You can customize what you want your sex robot to look like.
It's meant to be a sex robot.
One of many features, but that's number one.
Because the thing I saw, it was like, oh, this robot will help inside of households. And I'm like, she doesn't need to look like that to help in a household. That has a different idea behind it.
Yeah. Well, they have to create it so that it's a welcomed addition to your family.
Yep. That'll be welcomed.
What are your feelings? I mean, again, if we wanted human beings to, have less babies, we throw in things that compete with that. And so, women overplayed their hand on this, right? Right?
Did we?
Totally. So women made it so hard to get sex, right? So hard to get sex that all you would have to do is throw a robot that was sex no matter what. And are men going to really jump the hurdle to get sex when they could just go home and I don't know, give it a name, Karen. We'll call it Karen because that's an unpopular name. So Karen's at home and she's just a robot. Am I going to do the dinner thing and all the inconveniences and the costs that go in nurturing a relationship to get the end result, which is sexual gratification, if I could just go home?
I have questions. There's a movie. Have you seen? I keep seeing little snippets of it online. There is a movie that Megan Fox made, and she's a robot, and she lives, and she's helping this family, and then the husband cheats on his wife with the robot, and I'm just I have questions.
All right, what's your questions?
Like physically, how does that work?
What do you mean?
It's metal parts. I'm assuming
doesn't have to be. You haven't been in a sex store lately, have you?
It's been a while.
All right. So I would go when you're feeling morally at a low, go into a sex shop and just look at the technologies that they have
for research.
For research, just for science. And I've seen them. I haven't used one, but I've seen them. They're actually you picture, the CPR dummies that used to bring into school and they'd have a mouth that was rubber, plastic, and whatever. Sort of like that. It's just a portion of the pelvis,
and it's realistic,
and it is made with rubber, whatever, that is made to be realistic, so that guys, guys can get off on a doorknob. I mean, it's not going to take a whole lot for the guy's side.
Be that realistic.
And if you look at the girl toys out there, they're not uber realistic. They serve a single purpose, and you can create an analog close enough to be able to get gratification without it being a full body entity. But if you're making a robot, and think of the legs and everything, the skeletal parts, all of the skin and all of the other elements can be replicated with the same thing that's in the little torso, right?
So then why would a female need a male? Couldn't women?
That's what I'm saying. Same thing.
Which, and again, this will then sort of decrease the population, would it not?
It will. I think the women part of it is, I think women a lot want the relationship more than just the action, and I think men are the opposite, where they want the action and they'll tolerate.
Men will be like, no, I want a real woman that I.
Well, no, I mean we've got so much soy in our diet right now. We very well.
Wait, only if they had soy in their diet would they want a relationship?
Well, it's the amount of soy in everything, their blood and their muscles.
That's what they need to want a relationship.
If you cut someone's arm, estrogen flows out of the
You're
womb.
in a relationship, but are you only in it because you're full of soy and estrogen?
No, I'm not full of soy or estrogen. There are people that take a different path. And when there's less estrogen, then you don't have so much of the feels. That's the byproduct, is that feminization of men through chemical impacts and cultural impacts. Boys are turning into girls. They really are.
But if you take away that emotion, wouldn't we then just end up with a population that is only hooking up with robots because there's no emotion?
Yeah.
But that would be bad.
Yes, it would be bad. Again, this is the inevitability of what's going to happen. If you take all guys and say, over the last 100 times that you had sex, how many of it was for the physical pleasure and how many were you just feeling the romance? And if you take probably 10% were for the romance, like you were just feeling it. Maybe you watched a tearjerker or another jerker on TV and felt like getting into it. But most of the times it's just the routine, right? The sexual gratification routine for guys. Now in women, that's probably skewed. 80% of the time, it's probably an emotional connection.
I've heard women are more mental.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, big time.
You're like, they are.
But so if you take all of the guys and only make them participate in the 10% relational when they feel like it, and 90% of the time they're just humping the latex girlfriend, right? Then that's what you do. It swaps the power dynamic of who needs the sex and who wants the sex.
You don't think there'll be enough guys that want to reproduce? That are like, I need real women. I want kids.
No, we just had a whole segment on dinks, right? People celebrating the fact that they're not having kids and they don't want it, and they're selfish and narcissistic. They're not gravitating in that direction. There's definitely an age where a demarcation right on that age of people who celebrated and the whole purpose was to have a family and kids, and then everything below that is like, I'm gonna. Kids are a consequence. They're not a blessing.
They're going to cost me money.
Yeah, exactly.
I want to keep my money.
I want to go on vacations and not put money into this little thing that eats a lot and smells terrible.
Especially when Social Security's going
not going to be there.
I need my money.
Right. So again, that inevitability is that guys are going to be, taking out their needs on something inanimate.
And again, that would be our fault. Because we make the robots and we buy them. Humanity.
No, if women would have been easier to conquer, then
wait a minute.
Yes.
Wait a minute. You mean because women have standards? And it's like, hey,
you call them whatever you want.
I need to get my needs met, and maybe I want to reproduce.
If you have something of trade, something that somebody wants, you can pull that off. You can negotiate your way.
They want the personality and the companionship and the relationship.
10% of the time. But
10%.
The other percentage is they want the sex. How many relationships were predicated on, I'm not going to have the sex, I just want to get to know the person? And how many of them are hookups that just sexual gratification?
But
you gotta look at the numbers.
People are still getting married today.
That's fine.
When there are so many other options.
We're not doing in everything. I'm saying when there is an option, you're going to take a large percentage of the male population who chooses not to have sex with a needy real person and has sex with the not so needy robot.
But can't they kind of do that now? I mean, it might not be like a walking, talking robot, but there are more, maybe less advanced devices that they could use, but people are still getting married.
As they become more sophisticated and a one-for-one analog, it comes with other things, and we might be able to fill the whole emotional role, right, through the robot as well. Like maybe you might need something emotionally. Guys only need like a couple things, and it's way at less volume than women are. So my guess is that the robots will get so good that, and if it becomes taboo or there's a stigma, then it's a dead deal. If society can somehow throw some villainry at it, then maybe
I'm sure
we stave it
could.
out. But if it becomes acceptable and everybody's just like, hey, do what feels good, then it's going to be a thing. Nobody's going to be embarrassed about it. And women are going to have way less to choose
like,
from.
oh, this is my robot companion.
Yeah.
This
She's
is my
customizable.
date.
You can change her.
Wedding dates, and they don't have to eat anything or drink
things.
anything.
Yep.
I still don't think it's going to be the same.
I think it will. I think it will
be the same if you are a psychopath. I mean,
listen, but
we are breeding a new generation of people that are turned off.
Yeah.
We are mentally tuning out. We are relying on devices. So those people could then look at a robot friend and be like, just as good as a real friend.
Yeah.
Because we're robots ourselves.
Well, you have to shift your needs. And that's what we've been doing, is taking the needs and like pushing them down to a different level. Like this is a small dose of everything we're talking about. Right. So this is like, I could call somebody up or I can text message them. Right. Yeah. One is a less emotional exchange. And which one do you have preference? We have a generation that don't even like the call, when there was a need before of social interaction and learning how to communicate and whatever, right?
Yeah.
But in small doses, we're like, now, do I want to be able to say stuff anonymously, right? That's another step in the, before it would be like we would govern ourselves based on how we were to judge and how others would judge us. So it regulated our behaviors. We removed the regulation of behavior. So what you're doing is you're pointing to ideals that are being removed from society. So you want guys to choose women instead of sex robots, right? Yeah. But everything in every other department where we're taking out real connections, we're making these things just as good. It's just a matter of time before it spills up in a different department where you're not going to prefer the emotionally healthy one. You're going to prefer the one that benefits your narcissistic tendencies.
Oh yeah. And I had no idea people making phone calls was such a big deal until recently. And I know a handful of people, and then I've seen even videos about it online. The sheer anxiety and panic and discomfort with like ordering a pizza on the phone. Not doing it. If I can't order online, not doing it. You know, if I can't pay at the pump, I'm going to a different gas station. I'm not going in and having a human interaction with a clerk. No, like it's terrifying to people. And I'm like, what the hell is happening to people? And anybody that has an issue has no reason to deal with that issue, because why? I can get around it. I don't have to have human interaction.
We have to get a lot more comfortable about talking, listening, and adhering to what slippery slope people do, because they are giving you a potential or a probability of something that might occur, and we don't take those things seriously, because every answer at the end of the day is go back in time. You don't fix this one. Once you break it, it stays broken. Go back in time and don't do that thing in the first place. Don't believe in yourself so much and have so much confidence that, you know, you'll choose talking to someone over lunch in person rather than texting them once a year and never really seeing them face to face. We're already broken and we have preference for it. So how do you undo it? You don't. That was the whole point and purpose. I mean,
look how people used to have like high school reunions and things of that nature, which they still do. But why? I mean, you know how many times I've been invited to a high school reunion? I'm like, I could already tell you what everybody's doing. I already know.
Yeah.
We see it on social media. And if I don't care.
But we supplanted all of the emotionally healthy things. So there's going to be a point where you can't point to that and say that's a need, because in every choice that we had, we chose the more convenient, easier method. And we said, that's okay to put this little I'd rather do a Zoom call than drive up and see somebody in person kind of thing. We make that choice every single time.
I mean, during COVID back in 2020, when everybody was sort of locked in their homes, what did Meta do? They had the whole like the AI meetups. Remember that? Where people can go and do a meetup in this metaverse, and you have an avatar and you hang out, and it filled that need for social interaction, which was probably one of our last human needs that we have right now. And once we now have a way to fill every human need with technology.
But even if you gave that back, it's just like your zoo creature that you've been feeding for the last 10 years.
Yeah.
If I took and just gave you a choice to go get some human interaction, we're incapable of it. We don't have the emotional intelligence. We don't have the strategy. Everything's awkward. Everybody has anxieties about things, things that, someone in their 50s right now, if you take the soft soy boys over here and you have the iron workers over here, and you just expose them to frictions, right? I went up to the iron worker and I was like, you're a pansy and you're ugly and whatever. That person gets razzed like that every fucking day at work. But you take the soy boy and say, you look kind of dumb, and they're devastated, right?
Yeah.
Because was this healthy where we beat people down so that they have tolerances for that? Probably not in those big doses, but also keeping people free of the frictions of people, not complimenting you every 2 seconds and saying nice things and using your preferred pronouns and all of that horse shit. We've softened people to the point where they can't take meanness or things that make them feel bad.
Yeah. And I've even heard, with kids, they say, don't solve all their problems for them because you rob them of self-esteem.
That's exactly right.
And now they don't even have that because everything was done for them. Everything was solved for them. They were given a device. I noticed the other day, my son was doing homework and he was trying to figure out like ounces and cups and things of that nature. And I was sort of like doing something else, listening to like, how is he going to figure this out? If he doesn't have a book, you don't have a textbook with this in it, you're just doing this worksheet on your own. And I'm just waiting for him to like ask the Google or something, or pull out a phone. And I think he ended up just getting some help with my husband or something. But I'm like, well, buddy, here are some measuring cups in the drawer here. But how quickly he could have just asked the device like that and moved on. And I'm like, oh my, that's going to be our future. That like, as kids are coming up, that's going to be it. The problem solving is going to be like that. Some technology, give it to me. There's no difficulty. There's no, oh my gosh, I worked hard and now I have a sense of accomplishment, or I have the idea that I can do difficult things anymore. I mean, just like the things we will change in human beings because of technology is scary.
And we're doing it in all departments. I mean, when you were in school, did a book report, did a research paper, you went to the library and you pulled about 12 different books and you read them and you made citations and you wrote your part and you quoted the other parts, right? I bet you the libraries don't get a bunch of kids doing research papers the same way that you did, because now the same stuff is available on the internet. They don't have to go to the library. They don't have to look things up. So as technology makes something not necessary anymore, you'll lose that. So if you have a phone with you always and it can do all of the math that you ever needed to do, if I could say, Siri, what is this? And it gives me the answer. Do I have to know how to do multiplication? Do I have to know how to do all, formulas and algebra and whatever? No, the phone could do it.
Yeah.
So we're going to willingly give all of the reasons, like all the things to technology to make us completely useless. And then when we're useless, AI is going to eliminate us, and we can't be confused on that day. We're doing it every stinking day.
Yeah. We got in a conversation recently about cursive. People are like, oh, kids aren't learning cursive. Well, my kids started to. I know they've had a little bit of cursive in school, but they said not much, just a little bit. And my mom asked them, so how do you make a signature? You guys just don't sign a signature on anything? What do you do? And we're like, everything's typed out, or you just write it. You just write a letter. What incentive do they have to learn cursive?
They do not.
Yeah. And so what can be replicated? Print, typing. You don't have a signature on anything to prove its validity anymore. So now there's security issues with that, and AI being more like humans and humans being more like AI, and we're all just gonna like become one thing. Many years from now, humans and AI, same thing. We will have one.
What is like a brain in a jar, that kind of thing?
Exactly.
Now you can see that's why that's the end trajectory.
It's happening. You either have like a fleshy brain or microchips, and they do the same thing. That's scary.